We're definitely going to wrap it up today. We're learning this whole thing about the splitting of the Red Sea, crossing of the Yam Suf. Took place on the 7th day of Pesach. The Exodus is finally complete when our enemies are eliminated. The starting point that we have is versifications that we have from the prophet about future time. The river is going to be split, etc., into 7 channels, the ingathering of the exile, and all this kind of stuff. One of the things that happens here, as with the sister Maamar that we did, B'chal Davar Dar, is comparing the future redemption to the original Exodus. We even said it by the first one. Okay, so you might be comparing it because the first Exodus is kind of like the template. You can't have any Exodus until you have a first one. But when we start looking at the details of it, why are you comparing this? They don't seem comparable. Not just because the details of it are different, as in you have 7 channels, and by the splitting of the sea there were 12, but because of Messianic times, we know there's going to be incredible miracles. The whole world's going to be different. We're going to see God in the world. The whole wolf is going to lie with the lamb kind of thing, and incredible miracles that, even with all the miracles that occurred coming out of Egypt, they don't compare with the Messianic miracles. It's not just why are you comparing the two, because they seem not in your league. You don't seem to be in the same league as each other. But not just that, it seems you're trying to say it as a good thing. It's going to be just like Egypt. This is a good thing. We're praising the future redemption. It seems like a backward comparison. That's the general setup of this maamer. Part of what we did, then we have to go into understanding, the same way also with the first one that we did. That one we did, what is the spiritual aspect of Egypt? What was going on spiritually? So the whole thing about Mitzrayim is limitations. Breaking out of our limitations and all that sort of stuff. So this one, what was the spiritual thing that was going on during the splitting of the sea? The general idea is that it's revealing what was once concealed. There is a massive change in nature occurring. This actually impacted the state of being, the state of the world was impacted with the splitting of the sea. Part of it is that the Jewish people didn't necessarily have to cross through the sea. It wasn't en route to Mount Sinai. So the whole point of them going through the sea symbolized something bigger also. Just to put in also the same way with the other maamer, we were looking at the original Exodus, the present commemoration, the present day commemoration, and the future, which is Messianic times. The splitting of the sea, what was the spirituality? Is that what was once concealed is now revealed, which is part of why this miracle, from all the miracles, is called a difficult miracle. Quote unquote. Why is it called a difficult miracle? Because it changed the laws of nature. Something that was outside the bounds of nature happened. Not just that it changed the laws of nature, because in certain of the other miracles we had that too, but it was preparing the world for what was going to be changed. But what was going to be changed? The world had to be ready as a vessel for the giving of the Torah in Har Sinai, because now heaven is coming down to earth. Now we're going to have this potential an ability for spirituality to impact the physical world, which we didn't have until that point. Someone could do something that was spiritual, it didn't linger in the physical world. Now, the world, with the giving of the Torah in Har Sinai, we now live in a world where spirituality stays once it's brought into the world. Something has become elevated. That elevation is an eternal elevation. Tefillin is always holy. Before that, it wasn't necessarily like that. Which is also part of why this could all only happen after the Exodus. That was the iron crucible for us, that we had to go through a cleansing process. Also, he put the world in their hearts, because the spiritual state of the Jewish people affects the world at large. The crucible, the iron crucible of the Exodus that we went through, purified us as the people who'd be making these changes in nature, as the ones who would be the light bringers kind of idea. And that also, the world is affected by us having been affected. So now the world is also ready to be a vessel for this light that will be brought into the world. A deeper level of what was going on by the splitting of the sea is that we saw what sea life was now evident to land life, to terrestrial life. Creatures of the sea, they know their creator, they live within their life source. They don't see themselves as independent entities. Fish, no, like we don't leave the water or it's not going to be good for us kind of thing. Versus on dry land, because we cannot live within our life source. We don't live within our life source. We envision ourselves as independent entities. However, at the same time, God wanted us to exist like that. God created a barrier between land and sea. Specifically. Also because, just as a general idea, when you look at the 4 elements of fire, air, earth, and water should cover land. Land is a coarser, denser element. If anyone ever reaches the bottom, ultimate depths of the sea, there's going to be sand, whatever is down there. Earth is down there. It's only because in creation, God said, let the water separate and let dry land come up. Otherwise, it should be covering it. And then air covers water, and fire is the highest element of all. That's a sublunar sphere, very fiery up there. That's a side thing. Angels are creatures of fire and air, and we're creatures of water and earth. Side note. So as a general idea, we now have this experience of what it's like to understand being within your life source. The way that sea life is. The way that sea life knows, I know where my life comes from, and I know that I am within my life. Even though we're specifically not like that, and we are supposed to envision ourselves as independent entities, also so that we could choose God. Sea life, they don't get to choose. The fish is not like, why not try living somewhere else? We think we can choose, but the whole point of it is so that we do think we can choose, so that we do choose. That's the general idea of that. Then we got into this whole thing, and it shall come to pass on that day, the spring water shall come forth from Yerushalayim, halfway to the eastern sea, Hayam HaKadmoni, the primordial sea. But they say that the water split, all waters throughout the world split, but it's not just that all waters throughout our world split, but throughout all the worlds, as in throughout all the spiritual worlds. They all split. There was a great moment of revelation at the time of the splitting of the sea, which is also going to be the precursor to the incredible revelations of Mount Sinai. Yam HaKadmoni, the primordial sea, until Yam Suf, which is like Yam Sof, the end sea. That's how complete the revelations were. The revealing of them, what was once concealed. We have this whole idea about how it's a preparation for giving of the Torah Mount Sinai. We know that because when the angels say to God, when's Rosh Hashanah going to be? He says we have to go down to the earthly courts to find out. Then we got to the whole thing about V'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha b'chol lavcha b'chol nafshecha b'chol medecha. You love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. What's all your might? This whole idea of will, the deeper elements of the soul, not just the revealed faculties as in the intellectual faculties and the emotive faculties, but there's something that goes even deeper than them or higher than them, and that's will and delight. That's a deep part of the soul. When you have a will for something, it permeates all of you, overrides any one thing. Delight as well, something that causes you pleasure overrides any one part of you. That's why I say laughter touches a most core part of the soul. You don't have a sense of self in a moment of laughter. Such a good laugh is that it removes everything. It just goes down to the very core of your being, that there's a delight. These are considered higher the faculties that we have. So what are we trying to achieve? We're trying to achieve the point where that which was once concealed, the will and delight, will now become revealed. So we will now use these, a will, a desire to connect with God, and delight in connecting with God, use these on our revealed faculties, the intellectual faculties, and the emotive faculties in service of God. The level of I want only you. I don't even want your world to come. What do you mean you don't want the world to come? It's my world to come. That's not even good enough for me. It's still too removed from you. I want only you. We did this whole idea about how when Hashem came down, when the Exodus actually occurred, God came down, b'chvod v'atzmo, the infinite self, infinite force of God came down, like a more essential part of himself. The three intellectual and the seven emotive faculties, so it's really six. They all get channeled through Malchus, kingship. But now there's also, we added a Keter, crown, goes above all of them. What does that have to do with anything? During the Exodus, when they were painting on the doorpost, all the great revelations were being channeled through Malchus. Very great revelations channeled through kingship. It's still kind of a lower level, and it's still channeling of these 10 faculties. At the splitting of the sea, we rose to this level of Keter, which is above everything. It's kind of just portraying the height of revelation. All these faculties, when we have wisdom, understanding, knowledge, kindness, severity, compassion, etc., these are all specific faculties. Wisdom is something very specific. Understanding is something very specific. They each have their own thing. But when you look at what overrides them all, this crown that, it overrides all of them, it's because it's beyond a level of specific division. A level that's even higher than being able to separate into individual parts. When there's only a whole and there's no separate pieces. To the point that they said, Zeh Kelev Vehu, this is my God. Beautify him, glorify him, extol him, build him on a boat, all the different interpretations we had. But the point is that even a maidservant, as in even someone who doesn't seem to be on a high spiritual level, could point tangibly and say, this is my God. That's the level of revelation. You can actually see God and point and say, this is God. Now this is what we did last time. Zeh Kelev Vehu. Vanvehu is a very interesting word that's being used there. So you can say the word like beautify him, you can say a word like build him an abode, I will be like him. A bunch of different interpretations of what this word vanvehu is. And we see just in the context about which direction we're going to interpret it in, but we see that. The bottom line is that point, this. It also says that at the sea, we said, this is my God. We said it once. That was the level of revelation. But in the Messianic times, behold, this is our God. This is the God we have hope for. Twice, because it's going to be that much higher level of revelation. Once we said Zeh once, so we're going to say Zeh twice. We double. Just shows also what kind of revelations is going to be the future and also how evident. You say revelations, it's such a vague and broad term. Like, what is that supposed to mean? It means that we're able to say this is God. Now you're like, where's God? Well, God's in everything. Okay, well, very nice. But where? Where is God? So to be able to say this is God. Where we ended up last time is that we went into this whole thing. It says, Kol HaShvi'in Chavivin. The seventh is always beloved. There's something special about the seventh. Why we're speaking about that specifically is because this whole thing of the splitting of the sea occurred on the seventh day of Pesach. It's just further supporting and heightening the specialness of what occurred on that day. Even though the Maamar only kind of referenced the line of it, we pulled out all the examples that it gives about how the seventh is special. The seventh of the patriarchs is Moshe. The seventh of the kings, so Asa, okay, you have the seventh of the days of the week, Shabbos. The seventh of the years, sabbatical. 7 years is Yovel. Seventh month is Rosh Hashanah. We saw many examples of why the seventh is considered something special. Now we get to the new stuff and now we wrap up. This is what I was just referring to. See, we have the crown again of Keter. Each attribute, the 3 intellectual faculties and the 7 emotive faculties, each attribute is distinguishable with clear definition. The Keter which is will, overrides all of them. The level of revelation that occurred on the 7th day of leaving Egypt, splitting of the sea and reveal and conceal and all that kind of stuff, what was going on is that we reached the level that was above the level of clear definition. The crown goes above the head, which is above the whole body. Will, as in my want for something, a will, can be expressed in different ways. You could feel it, you could do it, etc. If I want something, there's different ways that my body could express that want, or the will to do something. Different ways, like I'm determined to do something. So you could translate it. However, even though will can distinguish itself in very specific things, like, oh, if I'm going to run the fastest now, my determination, my drive is being seen in my feet, and my lungs, but it's being shown in my feet, right? My feet are carrying it out. That's individually, but it's also all-encompassing. The essence of will, it's the same however it's expressed. Also means it's beyond the boundaries of expression. Will is something that's just so all-encompassing. It's something that's just so funny. It's actually something that's just so intangible almost. It's so overriding that even if my will is being shown on my feet, or if my will is going to be shown on my hand, will doesn't change according to how I express it. That drive and determination, that sense of like, I'm going to get this, I'm going to do this, feels the same no matter which part of me is expressing it. On the one hand, it can be expressed individually or specifically, but at the same time, no matter what's expressing it, the starting point is the same. The feeling of it is the same. However, whatever channel is being used to express it. What does that have to do with anything? Because on the one hand, there was a great revelation that went on. It was a revelation for all, a revelation that was beyond all boundaries. From the primordial sea all the way down to the Yom Sov. But also it was a revelation that was tangible. Something very specific revelation. The revelation extended to each part of reality, even the physical part of reality. So we say the sea split and we were able to reveal the concealed, etc. It wasn't just like this moment. It was something that the revelation wasn't just for the higher worlds. It went all the way down to this world to the point that it was actually tangible. We said someone could point and say, this is God. This is very specific. This is not that. This is this. This is actually from the Song of the Sea. It says, Sus v'rachva Rama v'yam. Or said it's right, he cast into the sea. Rama, the word he cast, Rama. He cast, and similarly, and they were cast. It's showing, this is Rashi is now explaining this word, into the burning fiery furnace. I think that's talking about the 3 men that were thrown in. Oh man, I just blanked on what their names are. It was during the times of Daniel that there were 3 people. Abraham was thrown into a fiery furnace, and then there were 3 people later on who were also thrown into a fiery furnace. Nothing's changed. I like throwing Jews into fiery ovens. That's what's new, you know? We'll look it up later. Anyways, so what we're looking at, it's looking at this word Rama, kind of like what we did with Van Vehu. That's the whole thing with when you learn the original Hebrew, everything is so textured and layered. The Gadik Midrash, however, states as follows. One verse, as in Rama Vayam, Rum meaning to cast up. And one verse says, Yaravayam, meaning to cast down. These teach us the horse and rider went up and then descended into the deep. They were thrown up and down. Basically, what is Rashi explaining? When it says, Sus v'recha Ramavayam, a horse and its rider who cast into the sea, Rashi is explaining it that you can look at this word Rama. We translate, oh, he cast into the sea. Rashi says, no, that's not exactly what's going on. Yes, we do see this word has been used before as a term of stone casting, but he says we see another example of how this is being used. It's used as of lifting up and throwing back down again. In concept of the horse and the riders, as in when the Egyptian horse and rider, when they ran into the sea, they went up and then were thrown back down again. They had turbulence. They didn't just run into the sea and then they drowned. They bounced up and back down again. They actually describe it that according to the level of, I guess you say, goodness or evilness, that's how they drowned. So some of them drown like straw, which is very light. So it goes up and down and up and down and up and down. Basically, the drowning was a prolonged drowning. Versus those who weren't as terrible, they sank like a stone. So like they drowned very quickly. Don't mess with the being. It keeps tabs on everything very specifically. It's using this as an example to just say the Jewish people ascended to a very lofty level. Going up and down, we went up. And the great revelations descended into the lower realms. That's what we also have here. This is a verse describing this. Talking about the time of the splitting of the sea. It's a verse from the Torah. It says, then the angel of God, who had been going in front of the Israelite camp, moved and went behind them. What happened? Because originally, the angel was on a higher level than the Jewish people, so he led. After these great revelations, the Jewish people had now reached a higher level than the angel, so now the angel was behind. Here it's describing it as angel being the guide. That's the literal interpretation. Like at first the angel led and then he went behind to cover our backs. But taking it now on this Chassidic level of looking to this much deeper, this whole thing about all the revelations, you want to know how high of a level we reached? Originally the angel was a much holier being than us. We experienced these great revelations that at that moment, after these great revelations occurred, the angel was now behind us, spiritually behind us. We had transcended the level of the angel. Like, holy canasta. That's this great level that we reached. We're redefining the splitting of the sea. We're like, oh, they have the sea open and then everybody drowned. Like, no, there was way more going on there than just that. I think it's at shops, like when they take out the Torah, when they're putting the Torah back. Ala kol yiskadav, yiskadash v'yishtabach, v'nomer lefanav shir chadash, etc., etc. It's talking about how we're going to praise God, and we should sing a new song before Him. We shall sing. The word shir chadash, Hebrew is a gendered language, feminine and masculine. Shir chadash, that's masculine. versus Shira Chadasha, that would be feminine. This is from the text of the Torah, and it's also every day we say it in davening. This is the Song of the Sea. Az Yashir Moshe, Uvnei Yisrael. As Yashir Moshe Uvnei Yisrael, then Moshe and the children of Israel sang, Es Hashira Hazos Lashem. This song to God. Shira, the feminine term. Here, when it's talking about this future, it's talking about a masculine term. I don't know how much you're familiar with Hebrew grammar, but Az Yashir, here it's saying then they sang the song, because in sequence of events, but Yashir is actually technically future. It's not brought down here, but it talks about how there will come a time when Moshe and the Jewish people are going to sing again. There's a messianic reference in that we will sing once more. But back to this thing, why is the difference between feminine and masculine? Because any time that it would speak about Devorah and Yael, so there's a song that's sung then, and it's called a Shira. So Shiras Devorah, that's feminine term. Shir Chadash versus Shir Chadasha, feminine versus masculine. Feminine is now indicative of the pain of childbirth. So even though it's a great miracle that occurs, and that's going to elicit great praise, but there's still potential of pain and anguish to follow. All these other songs that we sang in these great moments of praise, regarding the great miracles, they were still sung within exile. Still sung without the final redemption having occurred. When we're going to sing Shir Chadash, the masculine term, that's going to be a messianic time when there's going to be no pain to follow. There'll be no potential for pain to come after. There's not going to be the conflicting emotions. There won't be any more sorrow dampening the joy. It'll be just complete joy. Childbirth in general will be without any pain. Maamar Lefanav Shir Chadasha, it's taught in Mechilta, so commentary. In commentaries it's taught. All songs are in the language of female, except for the Song of the Future. It's written in male. When we say song, we're talking about the song of praises that they sang after the miracles. So this is to say that a woman has the pain of childbirth, even with all the miracles, after them comes pain. Except for the future when there's going to be no pain afterward. That's why it's said in the masculine term. What are we going to say in the future times? Behold, this is our God. We hope for him, that he would save us. This is the Lord for whom we hope. Remember, zeh, twice. This and this. 2 times this. What is that indicative? There's 2 levels, 2 dimensions of Havaya. Remember the name of Havaya? It goes all the way back to the first maamer we ever did. There's a level of tzimtzumim through which physical and spiritual worlds were created. That's the splitting of the sea. The level that we saw is by the splitting of the sea. That was a level that occurred through the contractions that occur in the physical and spiritual worlds that allow the worlds to come into being. Right? God had to tuck himself in to let the world come into being. The splitting of the sea, we saw this level that allowed for the world to be created. We saw the contracted level of God. But in the future revelations, we're going to see Hashem's initial desire to create the world. We're going to see the level that rises above the contracted level. That's a level that's even higher. That's why Zeh twice. This is God, this is God. We're going to see the higher level of Avaya. Name of Avaya is a name of truth. It has 4 letters in it. There's a Yud, and then there's a Hey, and then there's a Vav, and then there's a Hey. It goes into this thing about davening. There's a paragraph called Ezras Avosenu. It has its name of Avaya 4 times, and before it is 4 times. So it's just bringing here that it's higher level of Avaya and lower level of Avaya, 4 times for 1 for each of the letters, 4 times 1 for each of the letters, etc. Final points. This is now wrapping it up. Ad yavar amcha Hashem, ad yavar amzu kanisa, until your people cross over, O Lord, until this nation that you have acquired crosses over. If you look at the first part, until your people cross over, O Lord, part 1, until this nation that you have acquired crosses over, part 2. First level of Avaya, first level of revelation. We see, oh look, here's God. This God, which God do we see? We see this name of Avaya, which is where the whole force, the whole power of creation comes from. Name of infinity that's above all worlds, etc. Messianic times, until this nation that you have acquired crosses over. You is a level beyond names. You is essence you. I want you. I want nothing but you. When I say you, it's beyond name. Name is more of an external reference to someone. You is the core essence of person. We're even going to get to a level that's above this name of Avaya because it's going to be a level without name. When you can't name something, it's too much for a word. It's too big for a word. Feeling such an emotion right now, I can't put it into words. It's too big for it. The revelation that we're going to have, that we're going to see, the God aspect that we're going to see is going to be also going to be a level above words. You can't even call it Avaya, which is the name of infinity, and the name of truth. You can't even call it that. That's what we're going to reach. Literally, it's the upcoming crossing of the Arnon and Yarden rivers. Deeper means Ad Yavor will cross future redemption. Avaya not written a second time because Jewish people reach a nameless level, too high to be expressed with a name, until your nation will cross beyond Avaya, beyond the name of Avaya. Avaya b'yamahu yetzumayim chayim Yerushalayim chetzav aliyam akadmoni. Remember this verse, and it shall come to pass on that day that living water shall come forth from Yerushalayim, half it to the eastern sea. Yerushalayim is made up of 2 words, Yarei Shalem, complete fear. Like the fear of God will be complete. So the souls of the Jewish people will contain a full-fledged fear of God. So come forth from Yerushalayim. We're now going to be at the starting point. We're going to be at the high level now. That all comes forth in that. We have, I don't know if you guys recognize, this is Tanya. We did this in the fear chapters. The year es Hashem Elokecha, And now, Israel, what does the Lord your God ask of you? Only to fear the Lord your God. Remember, said his fear of God such a small thing. Well, for Moses it was. Well, that's not helpful to us. But we all have a spark of Moses within us, like an illumination of Moses. That's not what we're doing here. What we're looking at here, now, Israel, what does the Lord your God ask of you? Only to fear the Lord your God. The name of Elohim, the name of nature, a name indicative of Malchus, kingship. Why? Because everything gets channeled through Malchus, right? That's how you can have creation comes about through Malchus. You can't have a king without a people. This world is considered a world of Malchus. The world of God's kingship is here in this world. We accept the yoke of God like the God's kingdom upon us. Creation and Malchus, nature and Malchus, and kingship go together. Havaya, the name of infinity, the name that's beyond all that, Ein Sof, the light of the infinite God. It's infinity. The light without end. There's no end to it. This is how people usually look at this. What does God want from you? We have to be reaching these levels, etc. But, simpler, we don't even have to get so complicated with all these different levels. Elokecha, ma Hashem Elokecha, Shalom Imach. What is God, your God? What does the Lord your God ask of you? Fear God draws down a godly energy. What we want to do is to draw down the light of Keter into the godliness found within the self, revealing godness within the soul. Elokecha, your God. Make God your God, but the peace of God within you. When we say your God, it's not just talking about that God should be your God, but remember we have a piece of God inside of us. That's our soul, right? The nefesh elokis. Your God, the peace of God inside of you, bring revelation to it. Draw down the superior level into it to reveal it within you. This is the punchline, the level we're trying to reach, that we want this high level, we have to draw it into the God within us, the peace of God within us. So, Elokecha, your God, God has given you a piece of himself inside of you. Reveal it within yourself. Know it within yourself. So now, let's get to the final thing, and you're going to recognize this punchline. So even though there's a lot of text here, this is the same punchline that we had last time. With all that said, why would the miracles of the Exodus still be spoken of in Mashiach's times? Why Messianic times are we still going to speak about the miracles of the Exodus? Because of the amazing quality inherent in the work of Iskafia, which brings Hashem unique pleasure, which is not had in Ishapcha. Iskafia, if you remember, is holding back, and Ishapcha is turning over. God derives a very specific pleasure when we resist, versus the pleasure that comes about when darkness is turned into light. So there's resisting the darkness, and then turning the darkness into light. Resisting the darkness weakens it. We're calling it darkness, but the evil forces. Resisting the evil forces weakens it. Higher levels when the evil forces are turned into good forces. If you remember, this is what we had in Tanya. There's two kinds of cooks, savory and sweet. Savory is when we say no to the darkness. Sweet is when we turn darkness into light. The same way that we like both for the palates, there's a very unique pleasure that God gets from the savory that's not necessarily seen in the sweet. A tzaddik is a perfect person, but a tzaddik is someone who's past the level of saying no to evil. It's not a thing for him. He's on a totally different level. That's our specific level, to say no to evil. And that God gets very deep pleasure from us being strong enough to say no. This is due to the measure of the Beinim and their task to subdue the evil impulse and the thought that arises from the heart to the mind and to completely avert his mind from it, repelling it as it were with both hands. Push it away and say no! With every repelling of Islam from his mind, the Sitra Achra is suppressed here below. There are two kinds of divine pleasure, one from the complete annihilation of the Sitra Achra and the conversion of bitter to sweet and of darkness to light. The former, the emotional faculty of the animal soul, and the latter, is mental faculties, accomplished by tzaddikim. And the second, when the Sitra Achra is subdued while still at its strongest and most powerful. Soaring like an eagle and from the side Hashem topples in response to human initiative. As a result of efforts to subdue the Sitra Achra in the soul, this is accomplished by the Beinim. Even with all the revelations and everything that's going on at the time of the splitting of the sea, it's still all within this world that we're living in. And despite the great revelations that we're seeing them on the level that we are at. Even the maidservant said, "This is my God." That's the times we live in now. Messianic times, it's just, there's no more shadows, there's no more darkness anymore. Last one, we're saying that we're going to miss the time. We say, remember what it was like to say no. Remember what it was like to resist. Because why? There's this unique kind of pleasure that we give to God when we say no. And then the Maamar ends off with the prayers for the redemption. And a shoot, which is reference to Mashiach as in the beginning of a plant shoot. And a shoot shall spring forth from the stem of Yishai. Yishai is King David's father, Jesse. And a shoot shall spring forth from the stem of Yishai, and a sapling, Mashiach, shall flourish from its roots, and the Spirit of Hashem shall rest upon him. They, wild animals, will not harm nor destroy in all my holy mountain, as in the entire land of Israel. Coming of Mashiach speedily in our days. Amen.